Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We are now 49 hours and 54 minutes away from the NHL trade deadline, and we had a lot of stuff happening yesterday. I wonder whether there's going to be anything left on Friday.
Oh, Mike.
I know. I'm Mr. Negative.
I expect you to come on here and be the epitome of optimism today. I thought that would be where you go with it. I thought you'd be like, well, because we're still the plot is thickened.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that. Let's start with.
We'll get to that soon, but the plot is thickened, Mike. This movie is not over.
Let's start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah. So today we learned really nothing from Aaron Rodgers, although he came out of his dark cave and he decided to talk. And he said something.
Saw a shadow. There's going to be 6 more weeks of winter, right?
Yeah. He said something profoundly stupid too. He said, "The answer is within me." No kidding. Really? That's a shock. Like, it's unbelievable how drawn out this is getting. And I'm sure the Packers are not happy about this because, like, he's holding that franchise hostage. The Jets are, like, in limbo, wondering what they're going to do because he's not doing anything. And he's just like, yeah, I haven't figured it out yet.
I'm a child of the 60s, so I know that the answer is blowing in the wind. That's what it is.
How many teams must a man walk down, Kevin?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman.
Yeah. So, oh boy, let's talk some hockey. There's so much. We got a lot to unpack here.
You got it. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Ready, ladies and gentlemen. It is February 29th, right? I'm kidding. I know it's not. Hello, Hockey World. It is March 1st, 2023, and it's a Wednesday.
I'm Michael Lagello, and nothing happens in Toronto, right?
Yeah, right.
Let's go from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Eckler. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. We couldn't be happier to have you with us today. We're going to bring you all the news that's fit to talk about, and we're going to try to break some things and then fix them. So,
and Joe Jurgen will be joining us at some point during the show.
Yes, Joe, you're here too, because he's going to be interesting to talk about. We have obviously so many things to talk about, but I really before we get into Toronto, which we're going to.
Oh, yeah. Let's start with quick.
We got to start with this because, Kevin, I'm dying to hear your opinion on this. Yeah. I heard about last night. I wanted to call you right away. It was like 1 a.m. So let's do that.
Yeah, I would not have been up.
No, so. but you've been around quick. You know this whole thing. This just shocked me. Like, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it did because you would think that the guy that was so important to the franchise that he would have a more. I don't know, sentimental or just less icky departure from the team. So and I get the impression based on the fact they're saying he may not report that he didn't see this bullet coming, and so all of that, and I just was on Pittsburgh radio, and they were one of the things they asked me is like when Crosby's contract is up in a couple of years. What do they do then? And, they kind of preface it by saying, well, we assume that they'll just let him decide. But if they let him decide, what will he do? And, they just didn't give that to Quick. And, Quick is not Crosby, but he's just as important to the franchise as Crosby is.
I have a good perspective on this because in the 2000s, when I covered the Rangers exclusively, the first one of their 94 team that was really – most thought he would stay with them the whole time. But right before Mike Richter got his skull fracture in his last year, there was talk like, would they trade him? Would they move him out? But in the end, they decided to keep him. Now, they did the opposite with Brian Leach, and he never forgave Glenn Sader for that. Matter of fact, Brian Leach really never showed up at MSG for a lot of stuff until, recent years because it really hurt him that much. And I'm going to take the side on this one just because I've spoken to people who work in the Kings and know what they think of Jonathan Quick over the years. And I'm going to say this was a move that, this is going to have ramifications. Like Jonathan Quick probably won't be coming back to the Kings until 4 or 5, 6 years down the line until he gets over this, because honestly, it seems really unnecessary because there could have been a better way to do this.
I agree. I mean, the thing I associate it with, Russ, and this well, is what the Rangers did at Jockeman, and when he went to Detroit, and he was at the end of his career. He wasn't the goaltender that he was when they in his prime when the Rangers were making Stanley Cup Finals.
first game. Like he goes to Detroit.
But then he goes to Detroit.
And he Square Garden and wins.
Right. And the thing is, and you said it this morning, I think he's never going to play a game with Columbus. No. I think he gets flipped someplace. I think they retain salary. But it's a terrible optic. And apparently what the report was last night was that it leaked before and it got really messy. And it was really an emotional scene on the plane going back to LA. So, I mean, this was handled badly. It's I mean, you know, maybe in a few years when they put his statue up like they did Dustin Brown, it'll be, you know, it'll put a salve on the wound, but you know, it's terrible. And it was handled badly.
It really was. And you know, and here's the thing. I don't think he's going to go to Columbus. I think, you know, he's not the kind of guy who would do that because but I do think that Jarmo might be brilliant here because I think that there's a part of this that Jarmo's been talking to everybody who needs a goalie about Korpisalo. He knows all the different situations. I talked to somebody about this morning, and they said, "Yeah, you know, what if a team said, you know, we like Korpisalo, but we'd rather have a goalie that has some experience, maybe he's won something." And I was like, "Okay, maybe I'll talk to you in a couple of days." You know, like, and I really think that would there be any better drama than him going to Vegas and going to Vegas and Vegas playing LA in the playoffs? I mean, that would just be. We need that.
I don't think Quick wants to go anywhere. I think he is going to just retire. I don't think.
I don't think he's good enough anymore.
Right.
But Kevin, he was good last year. And remember, he is a guy who is driven on emotion. Like he's emotional. He's a driven emotional guy. And the vendetta and the vindictiveness and the anger of them making him like a piece of a puzzle, trading a first round pick with him to get these guys. It's just all that makes him feel like, you know, absolutely as small as you could be. Like you had to give a first round pick to get rid of me.
No, okay, that's okay.
No, players think about this stuff. They do think about it.
Okay, they got Gavrikov and they got Korpisalo in the deal. That was what the first round pick and the extra pick was for.
I know, and Quick was just salary. I get that, but still, to that player, it matters. And I think that if given the opportunity after a couple of days of cooling down, given the opportunity to go play for Seattle, Buffalo, or Vegas, he'll do it.
Here's what I'll give you a GM's perspective on this that was given to me this morning. And you can take it or leave it. I have my own thoughts on it. Quick hasn't played nearly well enough this year to take the financial risk of, you know, to bring him in. Right. Because, you know, maybe he could, maybe we'll rise up. But he just said, you know, you guys always operate in a vacuum where, you know, money is just money to you. But it really is a big deal when you bring a guy in at, you know, $2.5 million or whatever it's going to be, and he doesn't perform.
You're talking logic, Kevin. You're talking logic. I'm talking Vegas.
He's the third best goalie.
That's a good point. But again, you know, the other issue with Vegas is, and I keep bringing this up, and it's funny because this came up on the Penguins show because Joe Starkey asked me, you know, what is week to week? And I started laughing. And I said, you know, I've just been talking about that. Like nobody knows what week to week is. And they have not even come close to hinting of how long Logan Thompson is out. So we don't really know. Like, is he out long term or is he out 3 more weeks, 2 more weeks? We just simply don't know. So
I mean, the thing is, Korpisalo. The attractive qualities of Korpisalo this year, he had a .913 save percentage with the worst team in the league. Okay, that was one thing. The other thing was the $1.3 million salary.
For sure.
So you're talking about now the most that Columbus can reduce Quick salary is by 50%. So you're talking about almost $3 million for a goaltender who ups, but his save percentage is .876. That's Garrett Sparks territory.
Have you watched the Kings though? They are horrific defensively. They give up give up all kinds of chances.
Yeah.
And they are. I mean, I've watched a lot of games. I'm a Quick fan, so like I will admit that.
Is -23. He's a guy who used to be +28. Even if their defense isn't good, their other goalies are doing better than Quick.
Plus, 12 months ago. Just 12 months ago. We're not talking about like he hasn't been good for 5 years. 12 months ago, he's one of the best goalies.
He's been up and down. This was his first good year in like 3 years last year.
But it was also the first year that LA was competitive.
And
he's a competitor.
And in the wins in the playoffs against Edmonton, he played really well. In the losses, he played terribly. So, you know, I mean, it might be something that a desperate Vegas team takes a chance on. But I think there are other goalies out there, like, that they can get for a cheaper price, like Reimer, maybe like Varlamov.
I'll take James Reimer over.
Gosh, no, why?
Well, for one thing, we simply don't know whether Vegas is going to go get a goalie.
Correct. We don't know.
I mean, we're talking about that. We don't even really know.
Let's just assume that they have to.
Yeah.
They know that he's really hurt. Let's for the thought experiment here.
When you say stuff like, we're talking logic and then we're talking about Vegas, I accept that, because they do things a little bit differently.
Right.
But, I've talked to people that I trust who say Quick was terrible this year. I mean, not just bad, but he was terrible.
I saw him live. He was bad.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask this. Right? Recently, you saw him recently.
Yeah.
That game, that was recent, right? Where you get run out by the Rangers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
how many of those goals were his fault? I watched that game too.
I know that, but it's not even that, Ek. You can't put him in a game anymore and expect him to make these unbelievable saves to keep a team in it.
But let me ask this question. But if he does retire, if he just says, I'm not reporting, I'm going to retire, does that affect the deal at all? Because it's part of the deal.
No, he's allowed to retire.
Yeah. No, I mean, if he chooses to retire, that's his thing. But, I'm not sure he will retire because that's a lot of money to give up. I mean, I get that it's
he might. He's a weird bird. Kev, he's a very proud, weird guy. I could see him walking away from money. I could.
Yeah, he's not a just so people kind of understand is he's not an approachable guy. He is
busy with something. Forget.
Like he does not endear himself to people sometimes.
He's the prototypical weird goalie, though. You know what I mean? Which is what I like about him. I see him as he is the epitome of that weird goalie.
Well, but the goalies, it's been my experience. They're friendly.
Maybe I'm thinking quirky.
And just to Quick's cap hit is $5.8 million. His salary was $5 million. He got a $2.5 million signing bonus. So it's basically 1/3 of $2.5 million. So it's $800,000. If he retires, he loses about $800,000.
I don't think he's going to care about that.
Yeah, no, I don't think
$5 million. Vegas have like $5 million still to play with.
Vegas, yeah. After the acquisition of Barbashev, it's maybe a little more
$5 million to play with.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
why would you not take a chance of a guy who's won Stanley Cups who can do this? Like, and listen, I mean, goalies are so different, Russ. Than like you say, you all say it's been bad, but you guys know this. Goalies. You can change it. You can pluck a goalie out of nowhere, put him in a totally different situation where he looks like where there's no way in the world he would succeed, and he'll be lights out.
Yeah, that happened last year. That's the thing. This isn't Jacques Plante anymore. The league isn't like that where you can get away with that as much because you got fourth line guys that can hit the top corner on them.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never rule anything out in the NHL, but the Kings really want to make the playoffs,
right?
And they dumped them,
right?
Like that. I mean, it's important to them, and they watch them all season.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, but they also needed defense.
And Reimer's on San Jose, and he's doing better.
Right? No, but they were terrible defensively, and they tried to get other defensemen without giving up Quick. I mean, Quick wasn't about.
They wanted to get rid of Quick.
Oh, they wanted to get rid of Quick, but I'm just saying, it's
also,
not like they did for Quick swap. It's not like that. They got Gavrikov, which really, when you watch that team, Russ, you just watched them. How bad are they in their own zone? They're bad.
But his rebound control worried me.
Yeah,
it's always
rebounds like old goalies do. That's what worried me.
Yeah, there's no question about that. But you put him on a team that has a pretty good defense that can pick up rebounds for him. It changes things. Like
I think he's still going to be bad.
But he got out goaltended by a guy who up to this year has been a career AHL goaltender in Phoenix Copley, and he's played 27 games, and he's got an .899 save percentage, and he's playing ahead of Quick. It was over.
There's no question that Quick and LA had run their course, right? There's no question that happened. Now, whether or not you want to say that Rob Blake is an ex-player, why would he do this to an ex-player? This is just business.
Yeah, I think he did it because I think he feels pressure to get in the playoffs and in there. So,
but do you think also, Kevin? I'm not going to say no one would ever admit this. He couldn't say this to Quick. He couldn't say this to anybody. But when he's talking to Yarmo, he's like, "Do me a favor and find a place for him."
Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm sure Yarmo didn't want to take him.
No,
You know what? I think there's a better chance that somebody takes a swing at Alex Nedeljkovic than Quick.
I agree.
Nedeljkovic has got a .911 save percentage and a .281 goals against in Grand Rapids.
He doesn't have any Stanley Cup rings. He hasn't been.
I know, but it's at a certain point, it's over.
Guy.
At a certain point, it's over.
At a certain point, it was also over for Marc-Andre Fleury when he went to, and it's like he.
Not even close.
No, okay, all right, I'll take that. I know that's exaggerated. Yeah. All right, but I'm going to say, that there were people that didn't think that Marc-Andre Fleury would take him to a Stanley Cup final for crying out loud. But you put a guy, right?
Just to get off the argument, let's just agree that it's going to happen. Because we're just running around in circles on this one.
It frustrates me. Sorry,
it would
frustrate me. You guys don't realize what we watch. The sport we watch, and our goalies are different.
I know goalies are different, but it would be a good story if he goes someplace else and does that.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, yeah, and I'm not going to rule it out just because it's like you said, it's a strange world, and he has won a cup, and look how much emphasis we put on guys who have previously won a cup, but he won that cup a long time ago. Number one, and number two, he just has, he's not shown this season that he's there. So I mean,
so bad. And the last thing I'll say again is that if this season was like the last 4 seasons, Kevin, I'd be with you 100%. But last year, LA was competitive again. They were in the playoff hunt again, and he stepped up again.
Well, but he's supposedly he loves this organization. He loves the Kings and everything else, and he couldn't raise up and help this team get in the playoffs. Like
sometimes certain kind of goalies play better against. My last argument with this: Mike Quick goalie is going to give up rebounds. He's a lot like Marc-Andre Fleury. He's going to take chances. He's going to make big saves. He's quick side to side. There are certain goalies that work better with certain defenses than other goalies. And the defense that Kings have currently, does not play into Quick's strength at all. But Vegas or even
Seattle, because Seattle's defensively struggling as well, and Buffalo is too. So
Buffalo's not the best spot for him too. But Vegas feels like to me that's a goalie. Put that goalie with that defense and give the confidence like Eichel.
By the way, I think Vegas is looking for a defenseman, so they're not confident in their defense either. So.
I know. They're not. Everyone's got those problems. Anyway, we'll move on. Let's move on to
let me float this and ask Russ this first, because obviously the Patrick Kane situation finally resolved itself. We knew he was going to the Rangers, but I heard an interesting comment regarding this, that Chuck Fletcher did a better job getting consequential return for Claude Giroux than Kyle Davidson did for Patrick Kane, because Patrick Kane ended up being a conditional 1 and a 4th round pick for a surefire Hall of Famer who still has something left. And Giroux, for Giroux, Fletcher got a number 1 Owen Tippett. So
I'll buy that. I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, there's truth to that. The only difference I'll say in the negotiations of those things were that even though it was apparent that Claude Giroux really wanted to go to Florida and only pretty much Florida, Claude Giroux wasn't public about that and allowed the Flyers to talk to everybody as if he would go anywhere. That happened.
Then there's another factor too.
The other factor that I said yesterday was Bill Zito was pretty gracious in what he gave up too. Right. And this was more cutthroat. And that was because Davidson screwed it up on the first go-round.
Right. Russ was right on. The Rangers told the Blackhawks, we're not going beyond this.
That's a great point.
So, and they did, and, they just couldn't go there where you're right. I mean, the Panthers were willing, and they were willing. The Panthers really wanted Giroux, and Rangers didn't know they wanted Giroux until he said, I got to go to Rangers.
Right. I didn't know they wanted Kane. I got you. Yeah, absolutely. And I totally get that.
But again, this isn't going to be like an instant hit here, because he's still 75% Patrick Kane. He's still you can laugh back, but I mean,
you've been so down on him. Did the 12 points last week mean anything?
This is my moment. I have seen this my entire life.
I know.
Guys coming to the Rangers at different parts of their career, and now you tell me where he's going to fit in on the power play. I get he'll be with Panarin on the line. That's great in the regular season. Let's see what happens in the playoffs when things really start to get winding up. Let's see where he's going to be on the power play. Let's see him play any defense. Like, this isn't an automatic, we're going to hand the Rangers the cup now because they got Patrick.
No. It's one of the coolest things I love about people who watch teams grow in different parts of the world, like different parts of the country, because Rangers fans have a certain, everybody, like Buffalo fans have a certain thing they think is going to go wrong. Toronto fans have a certain thing they think is always going to go wrong.
Because they're right.
All I do is bring up 1994. They brought some players in from a Stanley Cup team then that were getting older. It worked.
Okay.
Oh,
they
well,
had Mark Messier on that team. There's no Mark Messier on this team. We could start there.
Yeah.
Mark Messier wasn't 37 years old or whatever Kane is right now. And Messier was in way better physical condition then than Patrick Kane is now. We could just start there.
Well, no, the other guys they brought in, the Glenn Andersons.
Yeah, but that's all because of Messier. Like that was played off of those guys, so it worked. Like
I'm just gonna quote every good coach that ever lived. That's a good problem to have when you can't figure it out.
It almost didn't work. Valerie Zolopukin tied up the game with 2.4 seconds to go. Brodeur almost beat him.
Did you just actually said it almost didn't work?
It almost didn't work. Yeah.
That's okay. Russ sounds like me now.
Russ, I got to say you do. I mean that you can't be more negative. You can't be more negative than it almost didn't work.
Well, because there was times where it teetered, but the point is,
stop talking to Mike.
This is
you really do.
This team is a far cry from that team.
Yeah, it almost didn't work out for the Yankees when they got Babe Ruth because he wasn't very
You've been infected with the Agello psychosis.
Yeah. But I can also tell you that the Rangers' defense of that '94 team is far better than the defense that you're seeing in this team.
Now, I'm sure
that's for sure.
I'll bring up something that we will not disagree on, and I'm being facetious. The Edmonton Oilers deal with the Predators, because Eck reacted like this was the biggest atrocity since 9/11. I mean, it was like, I'm sorry, okay, I said it before when we were talking about Carlson last week. And, I know, Kev, I understood your point that Carlson going to Edmonton would be sort of this wide open offense. Plus, he would possess the puck, and that would be the better way to go. And I said Ekholm would be the way to go because I think they needed somebody who was a stabilizing defensive presence. I didn't realize they were going to give up their power play quarterback and 2 first-round picks.
That's where I'm going to go. I agree with Eck. Not for the reasons that Eck's,
No, the same reasons, I think.
Ekholm about, that he just doesn't like Ekholm.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
Well, you really felt like he's overrated.
I was a little bit emotional at the time of your reaction, but it was based on what you're saying, what they gave up for. That's not what you give up for.
That's why I didn't love the trade. Already there's issues. I'm not sure Bouchard can run the power play.
No.
Yeah, right.
He's been in and out there.
Done it for them, so that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I know he had all the potential in the world, but he hasn't really shown that. So I think they're going to miss him. But I will tell you what happened with the Carlson thing. Because I haven't seen
one thing, Kev. Reed Shaper is going to be a heck of a player. That's a guy who's going to be a hard to play against second line guy who could score and get to the net.
Yeah,
play in the crease.
I remember I asked you about him. I tried to trade him, and when we were making trades, I did trade him. In fact, I don't remember who I got.
And he to make it worse for the Oilers, he's an Edmonton native.
Yeah, although I will say there are mixed reviews on him.
Okay,
because after I talked to Russ, I kind of asked around this, and I got mixed reviews on him. But here's the thing: what happened on Carlson that I haven't seen often. They did make a real effort to get him, and the problem is getting the third team involved. It was too many years. They simply could not get anybody to bite on, even taking $2 million for 4 years, because even the weak teams think by the third and fourth year they're going to want every salary cap dollar. Right. So $2 million was more than that, and those who would even think about it ask for astronomical return in order to do
what are you talking about? What kind of return are we talking about?
First round pick and another player. So
first round pick and a player to take away.
Yeah, they could essentially they couldn't get really anybody to do it. And then you always ask.
First round pick, I understand, but anything else beyond the first round pick, I think they had.
Just breaking news here. Pierre LeBrun is reporting the Capitals have traded Lars Eller to the Colorado Avalanche. So there's
a good pickup for them.
Now he's not a number 2 center; he's more of a number 3. But I think
good playoff guy too.
Good playoff guys, won a Stanley Cup. That's a good ad for them.
Yep.
I'll just say this: it's I don't think Ekholm is overrated. I think he's overpaid for the type of defenseman he is. He's making $6.25. They shaved $250,000 off, so he's a $6 million defenseman. That's a little pricey for the type of defenseman he is, but he's a good defenseman. So
he's a good defenseman. I'm not taking that away from him.
Yeah. No, he is, and he'll help them in another way. But if their power play, isn't strong enough.
Right.
And I mean, that's it. They're at 30-some%. So if suddenly they go down to 20%,
let's take all the other things away and say, should we give Tyson Barrie for Ekholm? Should we do that? And I look at that, I'm like, because
that's a fair point, because you did unplug your power play quarterback, like Kevin said, on the best power play in the league.
Right.
You improved your overall defense, but I watched that Bruins game, and I got to tell you, there was nothing that they did that bothered the Bruins other than a couple of odd man chances when the Bruins had a 5-on-3, but they didn't score on those. But other than that, the Bruins had that game all handled. So I don't know.
And just talking about the Bruins as we welcome Joe Yurden to the show. Joe, I watched that game, and the Linus Ullmark that is playing with the Bruins does not resemble at all the Linus Ullmark that played with 57 shots? I think he made 54 saves.
Yeah.
He's the only reason they got 2 points last night.
Yeah, and he hasn't had to have a lot of games like that this season. And that was a very unusual game for Boston, and that they win it is just kind of exemplary of how they've been all season long. But to have a guy like Ullmark where people are like, he's only winning because he's got the best team in front of him, blah blah, blah, all that stuff. Man, the dude's on another planet with how he's playing, and
he's locked in.
Yeah, I mean to say we saw this coming in Buffalo would be a total lie. There is no sign of any.
The only thing, Joe, I asked about this when I was at the Winter Classic. What is the difference in Ullmark in Boston this year? And people said he moved there. His family wasn't there. He never seemed kind of comfortable. Now this year his family's there and he's comfortable. And I just go back to where he was bitching about the Rochester Ice in Buffalo. So I kind of wonder how comfortable he really was there.
Yeah, but he was going through an emotional trauma in Buffalo. I think his dad passed away, Joe. So, I mean, I think there was a lot of underlying emotional stuff with his tenure in Buffalo that now he's past that and he's sort of moved on. And he's got
in Buffalo,
that team in front of him plays defense. And as we see with Buffalo right now, even though their offense is great, they still don't play defense.
Yeah, and I think especially with goaltenders, confidence begets more confidence. The team is so confident. When you're playing with a group like Bergeron and Marchand and McAvoy, McAvoy is a kind of a cocky defenseman. When you're playing with that group, it just kind of filters down on you, and you just figure, I'm part of all this. I'm part of this confident, cocky group, and I can do it. So I know the Bruins think that it's just for Ullmark, it's just confidence.
That's a great point. It's a great point. Can we all just admit that it was the best goal by a goalie ever? It was the hardest shot.
It was decisive. Yeah.
It was the hardest shot. He almost scored in the air,
Center of the net, yeah.
Wasn't Hextall's goal like that? I mean,
not like that.
But not this good.
This was a bullet. I mean, this was a cannon shot. That he shot it as hard as he did.
You got to be so strong to do that with a goalie stick.
And Jack Edwards is still in the PR of wherever he was broadcasting because he lost.
Here's the difference, Mike. I was there for Hextall's goal. Okay, when Hextall scored that goal, as a kid, I was there. And Pelle Eklund, the great Pelle Eklund, skated back into the net and grabbed the puck, and then skated back Hextall. Right. The Vancouver defenseman from between his own circles took the rebound of the puck off the net and fired it into the boards. Upset that the puck was shot so hard by the goalie that it came back out to the circles on a rebound.
Joe, let's get your opinion on the three big deals yesterday, and then we're going to talk about the Leafs. The quick deal, the Korpisalo, Gavrikov deal with Columbus and LA, the Kane deal to the Rangers, and the Ekholm deal to Edmonton.
Okay, a quick text real quick. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Joe.
Go ahead. We'll let Joe.
Real quick, Joe, this is all you after that. But what I was just told again is it is getting closer with the Penguins and Chychrun. It looks like that I think is, speaking of Hextall, to tie it all together, that Hextall obviously played with Jeff Chychrun, his dad. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. So this is that is I think what the Penguins are waiting to do or trying to do. But anyway, to go back, Joe, continue.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, let me start with the Kings Blue Jackets trade, because I was talking with a couple of the guys in the Buffalo room today, and they were flabbergasted at how LA handled every bit of this because, I mean, and I'm still stuck on it too. I was completely taken aback by it when I saw it last night after the game. And even this morning, I'm like, did they really do that? I mean, we're talking about a guy who, granted, he's not what he was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, any of that. He was really solid last year. He's had a bad year this year, which I kind of expected it. But he's your franchise's best goalie of all time. You know, he's your leading winner. He's won you 2 cups. He won a Conn Smythe. He's going to get his number put in the rafters when he retires. All of that stuff.
He's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's got to be up there for like one of the best American goalies of all time. Right? Like him and Miller, like that's
Richter, Miller, Barrasso.
Yeah. So and like it's an expiring contract.
Yeah.
He might retire after this. Like all this stuff, every bit of it just stinks. And like, I don't know how you make that move with your team. Like, and LA could win their division. You know, the West is wide open. They could win the West.
Yeah.
And now the entire team hates the GM because he's got a guy out that they all love.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
It's cold.
I mean, listen, hockey's a business. I get that, but
not like that.
That's the guy you move out to, like, to make the money work.
Yeah. Nothing else. You got to have a talk with him a week before you're thinking about doing it. And he didn't even know.
Yeah, it's hard. It's heartless. Apparently,
I'm believing, Joe, and I said this to these guys before, I have a hard time believing that Blake, during the conversation with Yarmo in Columbus, didn't say, can you try to find a place for him?
Right.
You know, and I think
you might have to now because I can't see any way he shows up in Columbus because
we were talking about it before, Joe. He's got an .876 save percentage. He has not played well this year. I don't even know if retaining 50%. He's still $3 million. I don't know many teams that are going to take a shot at that. You know, Ack was speculating maybe Vegas with their goalie situation, but I don't know. I'm
just speculating. I mean, I heard that today. That was through.
Yeah, right. I mean.
But the speculation are Seattle and the great Buffalo Sabres, Joe. Like, so like the speculation is those are the other places they can go.
Here's the thing. Like, imagine you're the Kings. You trade them. You're like, oh, at least get them out of conference, get them away from us, and then Columbus swings them right back to Vegas or Seattle, and then it's like, ha.
Well, but this
you're competing against these guys for the division.
Yeah, but Blake can't say it was his fault. You know what I mean? Because Blake, I mean, this happened like we talked about, like when Mark Strike got traded to Chicago, and then the Flyers traded him to Chicago, then Chicago traded him to the Penguins. You know, so there was like, but what could you do? Like, it's like, and they played against him in the playoffs. So it's just
the Sabres mentioned for Quick is interesting because he and Kyle Opozo are pretty tight because of through Matt Molson, Molson and Quick, brothers-in-law.
Yeah,
that's how that works. And and Molson and Opozo are great friends. So so like there's that connection. Although I don't know how you make.
Is he really going to go? I don't think.
I don't know how you make it work in Buffalo because he doesn't. It doesn't address it. I mean, it sort of addresses a need, but it doesn't fix any of the need that they have in goal.
No, but you got to think that Quick with the vendetta is going to be phenomenal.
I mean, the way he operates best is with spite. You tell that guy he can't do it anymore. And he's like, all right, screw you.
I mean, I've sat with that guy and talked to him a couple times, and he's just, you can see that, like when people, he's really like fascinating. He's a fascinating individual.
You don't think the Kings have been doing that with him all season this year and before last year? Like, of course, they challenged him every moment. They gave Peterson a contract. And they basically said, here, you're pretty much the number one because Jonathan.
And when they did that, when they gave Pearson the contract, we saw what he did last year, Russ.
But that's not the point. That's how down they have been on Quick for like the last 4 years.
Right. Now,
this year.
The Kane deal, Joe, finally gets done.
Glad it's done. I'm just happy it's done. It was very obvious for a few weeks that he was going to the Rangers. I mean, he wasn't going to the Leafs. I know Dallas was kicked around, Vegas was kicked around, but he wanted to stay. He wanted to go east. He wanted to be close-ish to home. He wasn't going to go to Buffalo. Nope. Buffalo was not making that trade. So the Rangers made all the sense in the world. And it's fascinating because they went and got Tarasenko thinking like, well, Chicago price is too high. And then they were like, wait a minute, New York's the only team he wants to go to. Well, here's a packet of not what you're looking for. Good luck. A better offer. So
they did not do well.
Yeah. So I'm glad it's done. New York's fascinating to watch the rest of the year. I mean, I'm very curious to see how Kane and Panarin are back together. Tarasenko being there is fascinating. Like everything about it is like, boy, if this team was around in 2013, 2014, like look out. But I mean, the Rangers made the Cup final in 2014, but it's the kind of team where, like, 5, 6, 7 years ago, you're like, man, this is an all-star team. It still is, but
that's the Lundqvist. I get it.
Now the Ekholm deal with Nashville and Edmonton, I thought Edmonton gave up way too much. I prefer Ekholm over Karlsson in the sense that I think Edmonton needed a more stay-at-home guy than even though Karlsson's having an unbelievable year.
Yeah.
But they just paid. I mean, they basically paid 2 number ones in Tyson Barrie. And that's, now the power play is a question mark with them. And even though, it was operating at a 31, but now they really have nobody other than Evan Bouchard to quarterback the power play. What do you think of that deal?
Yeah, it's fascinating because it does address the need with Edmonton. Let's be real. I mean, they need to be stronger on the back end. They've been so weird with Evan Bouchard because I think he's been ready going back to last season. He's been ready to kind of step up more in that role. But I mean, Barry's been so good. I mean, their power play is good because they have 2 of the best players in the NHL. Like there's that part of it. But I think either you, me, or Mike, or Russ, or anybody could hop back there and maybe pile up a few assists on it. But it's one where, like, but I mean, like, you're giving up a first round pick. You gave up your first round pick that you drafted last year. It reeks of a desperation move, but I mean, geez, it's the first time they've given up a first round pick in forever.
Yeah.
It's like this is the kind of move that you should have made maybe 2-3 years ago, because they're in a spot now where they've blown it so many times having McDavid and Draisaitl that now it's like, well, if we don't get something done with the West being the way it is now,
right.
I mean, I keep going back to thinking, like, there's no way McDavid wants to hang around with a team that is continually stubbing their toe on everything in the offseason and not making the team any better. So, but I mean, I think Edmonton's a team that can't be worried about the long term. It's the short term that they got to take care of, and they tried to address that. And I think I love Ekholm. I think it's a great pickup. But I don't know, man. Edmonton's problem is they have zero depth, and that's the biggest issue. I mean, they're fortunate. Darnell Nurse has been an awesome this season. He's been great, but I mean, it's just there's nothing behind your top 5 players. There's nothing.
Yeah, Kev, I was intrigued by what Minnesota did yesterday, especially with the Nyquist move, because the NHL came out and said that they're going to be very picayunish to say about guys on LTIR. And
good word.
Guerin, gave up a 5th round pick for Nyquist. Columbus retained 50% on that, but I know he came out and said he'd be back by the end of the year, but there's a lot of question about that. They did that, and they added Marcus Johansson from Washington. So what did you think of those moves?
Well, I certainly like the Johansson move. I just think, he's having a pretty good year, a typical Johansson year. He's got 13 or 14 goals somewhere in there. And, they need scoring. Like, Minnesota's well down the list in scoring. I think like 25th or 26th in the league in scoring. So they need to add secondary scoring. They need guys in that middle 6 group. And Johansson can move up and down in that group. I think he's better as a third liner, but in a pinch, he can play on the second line as well. And he's got enough skill to play with that group. And then I think for sure the league is going to ask for an independent medical evaluation on these.
No doubt about that.
And we've gone through this before. I mean, this is nothing new. But lately it seems like it's kind of gotten out of hand, and I think they wanted to make sure that it was everybody knew that they're going to be double checking and triple checking these things. And if Nyquist is back before, that's even better. In terms of if they are going to need a few points to sure they're going to get in, because Nyquist is a pretty good scorer. So it's gonna help that team.
Now, Joe, I've been bullish on the Sabres making the playoffs because of all the games in hand that they had. But yesterday they lay another egg at home against the worst team in the league in Columbus. They're 66 points. They're 4 points behind the Islanders with 5 games in hand. But what I'm looking at is they made the Riley Stillman acquisition, which maybe adds yourself a bottom pairing guy. But again, I think they need to get a goaltender. But from what I've heard, they're not. Do you know Alex Tuck is out week to week? I mean, do you think that Kevin Adams will do anything even rental wise before Friday at 3 p.m.?
They're holding their cards pretty tight to the chest. The message has been clear all along, and maybe it's one of these things where they're being very obvious and upfront with us, and we're just kind of like, nah, I can't mean it. They can't be real.
We
about
expect
that.
the message to change. We do.
Right. And their whole thing is that they want this young group to experience everything together. And, they to their, I don't know if it's credit or whatever, but, JJ Peterka's been going through it for like the last month and a half or so. Hadn't scored since mid-December until he scored last night. And then once he did, hair was on fire. He looked great. And like, that's the kind of stuff we want to sort through with young guys. So my initial thought was that with Tuck out, that maybe they go after like James Van Riemsdyk. Because he's very similar in build and style to Tuck. Granted, he's 7 years older. He's slower, the whole thing. But
just to add to this, Joe, so James Van Riemsdyk and Justin Braun and any other Flyer that might be in trade talks they're all playing. Schwartz is playing them all. So
you got to showcase them, right? I guess. I don't know, but
nobody's doing that anymore. Come on.
Well, no, I think Torts is not about that.
It's hard to showcase a guy who has 9 goals in JVR. Anyway.
Yeah, but if you're looking for like a reasonable Tuck facsimile, there's that with JVR. But I'm getting the feeling I get the feeling they're not really going to do anything else. Stillman addresses a couple of needs that they were looking to address. One is somebody else to help on defense because Bryson and Clegg have been, kind of in and out a little bit.
Haru's a disaster defensively at times.
Him and Power last night were horrible.
They were horrible.
Absolutely awful last night. But Stillman's also a tough, he's a sandpaper, roughneck type guy, and that's something that does not exist in the Sabres lineup. So that takes care of a couple things. We spoke with Stillman this afternoon, whatever it was, and he's pumped up. He's fired up to go. And the styles that Vancouver play and the Buffalo Sabres play vastly different. And I think Stillman's going to be pumped up to play here. So I'm not going to write anything off. I trust just about everything that they've done here when it comes to picking out guys and making things work. So I want to see what he can do with this group before casting any judgment. I will say though, on paper, it looks very weird because it doesn't really addresses anything.
Right. I have a question, Kevin, for you real quick. Because I just got another text about this. Dylan Larkin sounds like it might be getting somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I just heard today that Larkin and Yzerman had a talk like a couple of weeks ago, where they kind of explained that. I'm just kind of trying to read the tea leaves here, but I think what have happened is Yzerman just said, "Look, this is how I feel about it. Like this is all about me trying to save money to surround you with talent." Right. And I just want to make sure you understand this, that I'm not trying to, shortchange you. Well, I am, but I'm doing it because I think it's the only way we can build a team. But I'm sure Larkin kind of, spoke to him about what they need. I've heard the family has been happy about that meeting. And I think because of that, and I think they're going to meet. I felt all along that the meeting point here was going to be in the 8.5 range. I also thought it was possible that they may try to placate Dylan a little bit by front loading the contract, a la Philip Forsberg. You give him that $10 million up front, but on that back end, in your last years, you're not going to have that deal. So I don't know whether they're going to do that, but I think it's going to be in the 8.5, 8.6 range, somewhere in there.
Okay. And then and also wanted to bring up real quick obviously it's not trade related, but we have to talk about the Ottawa Senators sweeping and really running the wings out of the building a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like a tennis score, 6-2, 6-1.
Right?
In the first in those two games, and really, I think this has to solidify it for Yzerman. I wrote the headline when Friedman or somebody said that Bertuzzi was off the market, and I put in parentheses in the headline for now.
For now, yeah.
And that's clearly the case now. That it wasn't just the losses; they got ran out of the building. I mean, this team is not gritty enough. And the Senators, as we all know, are a big gritty bunch. And led by Brady Tkachuk. And Brady and Dylan Larkin are friends. But that friendship was not evident last night.
No.
So
And the funny thing is that Pierre Dorian came out last week or a couple weeks ago. He would evaluate whether they're going to add or stand pat or sell their rentals after the game tomorrow against the Rangers. I mean, they're still really not within great range of the playoffs, but maybe for team cohesion, he doesn't trade like Austin Watson or Cam Talbot or some of their rentals.
I still think they're going to trade.
I did want to bring up one other point from those two games.
Yeah.
The Red Wings in general played inferior hockey. Nobody played well except one player. Moritz Seider had 8 hits last night.
Yeah.
And he was everywhere. And every time his teammates got hit, he was the first one there. He blasted a few of their guys. I think he said to everyone, look, you guys want to play this way? Because I love playing this way.
So let's delve into the wonderful world of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'll give my point of view, and then I want to get Joe and everybody else's input on this. So they've made 5 trades in the last 2 weeks, starting with the O'Reilly deal. That seemed to be a deal that is working out very well. O'Reilly and Achari have played pretty good. They then on Monday made the Jake McCabe, Sam Laff deal, trading future draft picks and a Joey Anderson, who I think is a borderline NHLer who will get a chance in Chicago. Right. But yesterday, Joe, 3 deals. The first one dumbfounded me because I like Rasmus Sandin, and I think he's going to be a good NHL defenseman. But when they got McCabe, there really wasn't a spot for him. And I've heard after the fact that Sandin wasn't really happy with his role in Toronto. There was acrimony in terms of the contract. He didn't get signed until training camp. He wanted more than $1.4 million, but he settled for that. But they wanted to get grittier, and we know McCabe from his days in Buffalo. So once they got him, and they got him at $2 million, I knew somebody was going to go out. So let's talk about that one first. Sandin going to Washington for Eric Gustafson, who I believe they're going to flip for more picks, and Boston's first round pick.
The Sandin thing felt like fait accompli once they couldn't get a contract done early enough into the preseason. That just felt like he was going to get moved at some point. I thought it would be a lot sooner than that, but they didn't know what they could trust on their own defense. Obviously, they still don't trust it. If they're switching things around like this, like mad at the deadline. But the McCabe pickup, I think in general, is very smart because he's a hard ass player. He'll block shots, play physical, the whole 9 yards. Thing about this that makes me a little curious is that he hates doing media. He absolutely hates it. And he hated doing it in Buffalo. He really didn't like doing it in Chicago. I want to see what his reaction is going to be if there's a big turnover, and if he creates a big turnover, blows a coverage, whatever it is, and how he handles that, because it's a whole different spotlight. Playing in Chicago when they're bad is whatever. Playing in Toronto, that the spotlight never shows.
But we know how Leafs PR handles things.
Oh,
so it'll be limited in terms of their exposure. Now, the other 2 moves were trading up Pierre Engvall, which I know a lot of Leaf fans were happy at because he was like one of him and Kerfoot and Justin Hall are players that they sort of target and hate. Mm-hmm. But I think Engvall's got a lot of talent. It's just he doesn't show up with that talent all the time. But they get a 3rd round pick, and then they flip another 3rd round pick to Vancouver for Luke Schenn. Now, Kyle Dubas came out on Monday after the McCabe deal and said the deal that Tampa made for Tanner Jeannot did not affect him in terms of what he was doing, that he was talking to Chicago before even Boston made the Orlov deal. Maybe they were talking, but I'm sorry. I'm calling bullshit on this. They saw that Jeannot and Paul and Perry and all the guys on the bottom 6 running roughshod over that Toronto defense, and within 24 hours, they added McCabe and they added Luke Schenn. You can't tell me that it didn't affect their point of view.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that it did. I mean, we tend to throw the phrase arms race around too often, and it's become like a cliche, and it really doesn't mean anything. But in this case, it does. And, everybody's looked around and they've seen what's going on. Everybody's getting stronger. And, they're adding pieces that make their team stronger. Like Tampa Bay, doesn't need any scoring. They certainly don't need goaltending. But, they want to punish you now. And you bring in a guy, and I said this before, it's not Jeannot's the number of hits he has, because there are a lot of guys that have a lot of hits. It's how hard those hits are. Like in a 7-game series, like he's going to wear people down. And I think everyone has been reacting to that. Like, you don't think the moves that the Penguins made, clearing up cap space, is not reacting to the fact that, what's going on in the Eastern Conference. Like, if they want to survive, if they want to have even a small chance, and that's all it'll be, to win the cup, they got to do something. They got to be better. They're going to redo that third line, because that third line, is going to have to compete against Tampa Bay's, third line if they get that far. So.
No, Russ, it's funny because I heard criticisms from some Leaf fans on the Twitter Spaces thing I did last night about they're affecting team chemistry with all these trades. They've only moved out 2 players. They moved out Sandin and they moved out Engvall, but they've added 5. And I personally don't think that Eric Gustafsson's ever going to play a game with Toronto. I think he's going to get flipped for picks before 3 p.m. on Friday, because he's a 38-point power play specialist, and they have Morgan Riley and they have Timmins and Giordano who could back him up in case Riley got hurt. So he's an extra piece that they really don't need. But I mean, what do you think of the team chemistry thing?
Yeah, team chemistry I'm not worried about. And I think for pick, unless you're talking about like 6s and 7s, which
I'm like a 4 and a 6 or something.
The Leafs are collecting those lately. Look, I don't mind the moves that they did. What I do mind is the fact that they have moved heaven and earth to try and go 1 round in these playoffs. And the cost factor of this is massive. They're probably the 20th most talented farm system now. And I may be generous just because Nyes is in it, but it ain't great. And you go look at their drafts, and, there's a lot of holes in their drafts. And picks that they're getting back, they're basically getting worse picks back, even though they might still be a 3rd-round pick or whatever. Right. So they're downgrading all of that. Everything go 1 round, and if they don't, we're basically looking at like what every Leafs GM has ever done in the past with this team, gone sports turf.
I mean, Joe, to that point, it's like it does seem like Kyle Dubas. I don't think he's flailing. I think he's making moves that they really need to make. They're getting more gritty, as I've said they've needed to do for about 3 or 4 years, to the point that I think they're going to be a pretty effective team in the playoffs. It's just you're coming up against a team that won 2 Stanley Cups and had been in 3 Stanley Cup finals. It's just a hurdle that's near impossible. I don't think I think there's a chance they could win, but they're definitely still not going to be favored going into that series.
No, that's going to be really close to a pick 'em as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, Toronto needs to have home ice in that without a doubt. But they've known since December that they were going to be playing Tampa Bay in the first round. They've known that long, and you have them pretty well scouted out by now, I would hope.
Yeah,
I look at these moves from Dubas as a guy who is on the last year of his deal, and he's saying, "Listen, if we lose anyways, I'm out. I'm done. Like, they're not going to bring me back, so I might as well go out swinging with every possible swing I got left." So, and I mean, it's not really even like a mortgaging the future kind of thing, because the picks are whatever. Like, they've got everybody in line right now, and anybody that they draft that might be a big deal, you're not going to see them for 4 years.
No, but they lost players too, Joe. Like and they have a lot of UFAs and not a ton of cap space next year either. Next year, that bad year.
Russ, that's why it was important with the McCabe deal. He's got 2 years left. With Lafferty, he's got a year left. They traded a guy who was a rental that they probably weren't going to bring back. And
you'll be holding your breath with McCabe too, hoping he doesn't get hurt. Like,
that was
the thing. Like you said, Mike. I mean, honestly, the brilliant move I thought was having McCabe for 2 more years at $2 million a year is crazy. Like, he's a great defenseman. You got him for 2 more years.
He's not a great defenseman.
Well, no, but he's not a $2 million defenseman. Okay, like he's
that's a good price for him. That's a good price for him.
He's a $5 million defenseman probably, and on the open market he's probably a $5 million defenseman. So we're getting him for 2.5 years, 3 playoff runs at $2 million each, right?
But here's the key thing that we'll watch over the next 48 hours. I don't think Kyle Dubas is done. I think
he's going to move Kerfoot. I do.
No, I don't think he's going to move Kerfoot. I think they would have moved Kerfoot by now. It was either Engvall or Kerfoot, and they chose Engvall. Kerfoot is a versatile player that they like.
Why would they move him?
Yeah, why? I mean,
I heard there were cap reasons they would have to move him too.
No, they're under it now. They have enough cap room that when they activate Murray, that they're under the cap. So that the Engvall deal solved that. But
that's the other thing here that we should talk about. While their goaltending is slightly upgraded from last year, they're putting all of these mediocre to maybe slightly above average NHL goaltending.
Right.
Well, but it was slightly below average last year, Russ.
I know.
So.
I mean, this isn't like they have a stalwart in net either. They don't.
But still, everybody has a question mark, and that's their question. I mean, they're solid offensively, they're solid defensively. Before we go,
I don't want my question mark in net. That's the only thing.
No, I'm with you. I mean, and I've been there the whole time, but
I don't know, and I'm not sure, and I don't think that they're going to go down the road of adding another goaltender, which Kevin Weeks and a few other people have been out there saying, well, they might have been on Korpisalo, or they might be in on James Reimer or something like that. Yeah. I mean, Murray's coming back, and that's we know that's tenuous because his health has been up and down this year, but when he's played, he's been really good. So, I think that they're going to roll the dice on that, but I do think they're going to move. They have 9 defensemen right now. They're going to move out one defenseman, probably Gustafsson, and I wouldn't eliminate the possibility that they'll add another tough forward. I heard Austin Watson's name in connection with them, and I don't know about Ryan Lomberg was another name that was out
only
there.
So many Austins you can have them, you have a certain.
What's
Austin.
that?
There's an Austin limit. There's only so many Austins you can have.
Well, and this is a different spell. Okay, we have O'Reilly spelled with R-E and Riley spelled with R-I.
I know, it's very confusing.
Austin with I-N and O-N. No, wait.
The person who has trouble spelling from without an E, it's very confusing. The whole thing is completely. I agree with you. But Kevin, are you already working out your winners and losers, Kevin? Do you already have that figured out?
No, I don't. But I mean,
is playing tonight, not Murray. So when's Murray even getting in, Mike?
Sorry,
I told you they're going to activate him after the deadline, Russ.
So after the deadline.
Yeah,
he has 3 goalies right now. It's absurd. He's
on. Wait. He's on LTI. He's on LTIR still, Russ.
I know. He's allowed to be on the ice. I mean,
he's practicing. You can practice and not.
Is absurd. That's all.
Oh, stop it! You're anti Matt Murray crap.
If you are telling me you are confident in your goaltending right now to go all the way, let's hear it, Mike, because nobody else.
Russ, I don't think they're getting past the first round, but their goaltending is better than it was last year.
Okay, I'll give you that. But
thanks. Thanks,
How
Russ.
about Florida beating up on Tampa last night 4-1? Everyone, that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, Florida needed that win.
Yeah. They really need that win, but that's a huge win in Tampa, and they dominated the first period.
Bob is the most winning goalie actually in Russian history for the NHL. By the way,
people have been missing the Panthers. I've watched the Panthers every game, and they have been bowling teams over with shots. The last several games, they went Buffalo. You saw that one. You saw that one, Joe. It's up. I mean, that part of Panthers team looked pretty friggin' good. And and Anderson just stole that game from them. That's not the first time that's happened. So they're starting to they're starting to put it all together. And the thing that's scary about them is if they can make the playoffs, and my projection thing says they're really close. If they can make the playoffs, they now know how to play different styles of games. They used to just only be able to win one kind of game, and now they have worked really hard on trying to win low-scoring games or high-scoring games, but. It's fun watching them right now because they're sneaky fun to watch, and if they can do that to Tampa last night, they got a shot. They really do have a shot. Kevin, what are your thoughts on that as far as it plays out?
Well, the Panthers to me don't seem to be quite as good as they were last season.
Yeah, they're not.
Just in general. So I think right off the bat they're at a disadvantage because I don't think the Tampa Bay Lightning are worse than they were.
Yeah,
I don't think the Toronto Maple Leafs are worse than they were as well.
Yeah.
So, but they're still strong. I think Barkov's 2 injuries or one illness, 1 injury has played a role too. They really haven't had the consistency of the lineup the way they've had last season. So, and now they don't have a second goalie option as well. So, the chips are kind of stacked against Florida a little bit. I did want to react a little bit to what Mike said. I saw Austin Watson, just want to make an observation over the last 2 games. And I wonder if he's reached the point now where in terms of intimidation factor, and some of it is just his look, he's got, just the 2, he's got a big gap in his teeth now, but he's a ferocious hitter now. I mean, just beastly. And, hockey players in general have some niceness to him, but there was a moment when Jake Wallman had blocked a shot and was really hurting and couldn't get off the ice and then had to go behind the net to retrieve a puck. Watson saw him, knew he was hurting, and just crushed him. I mean, absolutely crushed him. Really? And I thought, wow. Didn't even give him quarter when he knew how badly he was hurting. So, I watched him and I thought, there's a guy you want on your playoff team because, he's very intimidating.
Just give him a 3rd rounder for it. Might as well.
He's had some good playoff support too. He was good for Nashville that playoff round.
Joe, it's final thing here. It's weird. Last year, the race in the East was over with by Christmas. You really had except for Atkins, we're going to climb back with their 12 games in hand. This year, the West is pretty much over with. I mean, it's Edmonton and Winnipeg right now in the wild card with a 5-point gap on Calgary. And you look at the East, and even like Washington, who's they're within shouting distance. With Detroit is within shouting distance. Ottawa, Florida, Buffalo, Pittsburgh. I mean, it's the only teams out of it are Montreal, Philadelphia, and Columbus.
Yeah, it's something else, man. I was talking about this with a couple of guys in the locker room today, and it's wild because it compares to one of the players that spoke compared to how it was in the NBA for a long time, where the Western Conference was just impossible for teams to set up, and the Eastern Conference was well, there's 2 good teams, and then everybody else is fighting, rock fighting to get in the playoffs. The West, I mean, geez. Calgary's it's fascinating because Calgary's the only team that's got an outside shot at getting in there. And if they get hot, they could be right there because everybody else in front of them is dropping the ball. I mean, Edmonton's look bad. All these teams in front of them are just not, they don't have it together.
Right. It does seem like this is Darryl Sutter's last season based on things he's saying in his post games now, though.
That's weird. It seems like he's just got there.
I mean, they were so good last night against Boston.
Right.
It's kind of crazy. They really should have won that game, and that's got to be totally disheartening to them. I mean, they have talent. I mean, there are some teams over there that you really feel like Calgary's better than some of the playoff teams. You feel like Calgary's better.
I agree. I don't like Markstrom. He hasn't.
Well, he was the guy who came in and saved the day after Vladar let in 3 goals.
Yeah, so I think they should play Darth Vader.
Kev, I look at the way everybody's stockpiling in the East, and there's an opportunity in the West here for a team like Dallas if they add 1 player, or a team now Colorado's added Eller. I'm not saying it's going to be easy because it's never easy, but it's an easier path in the West for an Edmonton, a Dallas, or a Colorado than the hellstorm that teams like Tampa or Boston or Toronto have to go through in the East.
Yeah, no, you're right on, but I think they've sort of read the tea leaves as, we don't have to do anything and we got a pretty good shot, You've got some talent. I mean, really, who's the best team there? Colorado's been beat up, but they haven't played nearly as well as they did last season. Their top players, aren't going as well. Edmonton has lost 6 of their last 8. The Kings, Vegas.
Are you worried about Colorado if they get Landeskog back like we think they will? Then I'm not so worried.
Colorado's been really high lately.
I mean, they got to make the playoffs. I mean, I saw the quote from Joe Sakic, and he said, pretty much exactly that. Yeah, if we can get in, we'll be fine, but we got to get in. So
they're basically with games at hand, they're basically in first place in their division.
It's interesting that Joe Sakic is a little more concerned than Russ Cohen is.
I'm just saying, their goaltending's better this year. Georgiev's playing well. I think that might help them.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to get into. I'm just
Yeah.
But
I mean, lately they've been playing very, very well. Without Makar, who's coming back now soon.
Yeah. No, that's right. And injuries have played a big role. But I don't have any idea what's going to happen in the
I feel
West.
like they're the only team that can play with the team's knees, honestly.
And if you don't have an idea, I sure as hell don't. But
I feel like they're the only team that can play with the team's knees, the top team's knees. Like I think if Colorado's healthy, they can play with that.
Yeah, Colorado and maybe Dallas.
Maybe Dallas.
Yeah.
But okay. We know. I'm just saying the team that comes out of 3 rounds in the East, it potentially is going to be so beaten up that the team in the West has a good opportunity to win because of that. I mean, Boston or Tampa or the Rangers or whoever, the Toronto. I mean, they're gonna be dinged up after going through 3 really tough rounds.
It's true.
That is true.
All right, well, all time we have for today, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will be back again tomorrow, and Friday, of course, we'll be here for the Red Line Show starting around noon, and we'll have something to do between noon and 4, and we'll figure something out. But I do think there'll be lots of trades. I think there's going to be lots of drama, and we'll talk to you all soon. Enjoy your day. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody.